like to briefly follow up on the great presentation of Danielle, just mentioning again that why is harmonization so important? Clearly, VAT is a tax on the final consumer collected by the business community. It has become one of the main revenue raisers for government, as Danielle mentioned. And at the same time, if you look back the last 50 years, it's a globally the fastest growing tax, because we have now over 160 countries in the world who operate a sort of VAT system. At the same time, business has been global too. So we have a lot of interactions now with global trade between different VAT systems, which of course is very, very important actually to have a sort of harmonization in order to foster global trade and to not have VAT as a trade barrier, but at the same time also to safeguard VAT revenues for the governments because it's one of the main revenue raisers. So that was just a bit the starting point. Now, what are the challenges if we look at harmonization? Number one, I think nationally we see that various VAT systems actually have different types of exemptions and different rates. And if you now look at putting this kind of, and has known tax culture or VAT culture, putting this into a broader context internationally or into the EU context means that actually having a history which has to be adapted now to a new set of rules. And if we look, for example, at the EU, we have a VAT directive. At the same time, we have 27 VAT systems because the VAT directive quite often is actually, the regulations are quite often vague. It's a compromise with the unanimity principle of 27 member states, which then the member states have to adopt into national law. So if now a new country, if we look back in the accession in 2004, but also when Romania joined and Bulgaria 2007 and later Croatia as well, if new member states actually want to join the EU, they're joining a system where we have to say, well, there is a directive, but there is no perfect system as such. You can learn a lot from 27 national VAT systems. So there are good practices in there in various countries like VAT grouping, other aspects, which I think as a new country you can pick up on, but it's not, it's a dream actually to say there's a one perfect VAT system in the EU and let's focus on this. So I think Mariana might confirm later on that when Romania joined, looked all over the place to see what can be found. And if you look at the Romanian legislation, for example, it's a fantastic legislation, very close to the directive. But at the same time, of course, in Romania, the difficulty is always the application by the tax administration, which I'm sure Mariana might say something about it. So the VAT law as such and being close to the EU law is very, very important. But as I always say, the best law in the world is worth nothing if it's not applied the right way by the administration. So the administration plays, of course, also a very, very important role in actually applying the law correctly. And so now if I look back in the experience which we had on the challenges, clearly I think what is very, very important also from the business perspective to start the accession process as early as possible because it takes time to actually get there, both for the government side, but also for the business community. I think it's very, very important to actually, as I said before, look at good practices which are around in other member states and see if they can be implemented based on the directive also into the national law, sort of with the culture, the tax culture is, the legal culture which is there. I think that's, from my perspective, something which I felt in the whole accession countries, accessions process which I've been involved, is very, very important to look at. At the same time, I think it is also very important, as Danielle mentioned, to consult actually with external stakeholders like the business community at an early with them to a certain extent, negotiated that within the accession treaties that they can, for example, keep certain exemptions, they can actually, how to say, keep certain rates. And that's, of course, is a complexity, I think, for the business community because we have to operate now in 27 different member states, 27 different rates, 27 different exemptions sometimes. And I think that's something which is a challenge also now as we see with the Commission to harmonize actually these kind of things we see with rates. It's not possible politically. The exemptions, it's always critical. Well, they have been used often as a policy tool. Can we now tax it, for example? Can we question mark tax financial services? It's a big issue politically, but also possibly for the small man on the street to feel that they pay a new kind of tax, which they possibly at the moment pay already hiddenly without knowing. So there are all these kind of political aspects which are also play a big role into the accession challenges. And I think what I wanted to say as well, I think, is that yeah, it's a process which needs to be actually dealt with with various stakeholders at the same time. It's the legal aspects, the tax administration aspects, the business aspects. And if you would want to make it work for all parties involved, again, as I said before, Danielle mentioned it greatly. It's important really to travel together, to consult, to work together on this. So clearly what we are seeing now is, and you mentioned it, Danielle, before, I want to just, because I know that we are strict in time, just outline a bit on it as well. We have seen that we have a system at the moment, which actually in the EU, which actually is known for being complex and sensitive or open to fraud. And here the Commission, as you greatly outlined, Danielle, has already sort of taken some steps to see how it can be improved. And here the definitive regime proposal, for example, is on the table, still from the Commission side. But at the same time, I think that's what I wanted to give an outlook to the colleagues here. At the same time, we have seen member states taking national measures, for example, in technology. We have a Spanish SII reporting, as you greatly mentioned, Daniel, before. We have a split payment in Poland. We have a mandatory invoicing in Italy. And all of this actually feels like they're all totally different measures going in diverse directions. And it feels like the borders, which 1993 have been physically taken away, are now going to be put in place technology-wise. And so there is a big issue at the moment that the current system doesn't work well. Member states actually take national measures to protect the system, or to actually fight against fraud. And all of this adds additional complication for all of us who operate across the 27 member states. So I think, therefore, what we will see in future, and the Commission has published an action plan on tax mid of July, where 25 initiatives have been mentioned. Out of these 25, we have 15 which are related to VAT, and one big important topic for the Commission going forward will also be the role of technology. What can technology do to improve the system, and what can it not do? So, as with all of us in our current life, being in the middle of a digital storm, whatever we do, technology plays a big role. It will be also in the center and in the forefront of the development of a future VAT system. And that's what will be very interesting now to actually see in the next couple of months and years, how far we can come to a more consistent approach. As I mentioned, we have different measures by member states. Can we come to a more consistent technology approach for the EU in order to make things more simpler? Because if new member states are going to join now and are joining this kind of fragmented way of dealing with things, it's of course an issue and is a further complication for them. So I think that's in short a bit what I wanted to share, of not only on the accession side of things and the challenges there, but also where our VAT system in the EU might go in the years to come. And there again, as I mentioned, technology will play a very, very important role. Apologies, I had no presentation. Some of you know I broke my middle hand bone, so I'm actually with my right hand in a cast. But I hope I could give you a good flavor of challenges on harmonization, but also an outlook what will come if in future. And with this, I'm open for questions as we go along our panel. Thank you so much, Danielle. I'll pass back on to you.